Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday or whatever day you happen to be listening to this podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is the How to Life podcast. I'm Dr. Laura Jaggett, and this is episode 53. And a good one it is. Today is another suggestion for the WAIG TDWML series. That doesn't really work, does it? Let's try that again. I have another episode today for the What Am I Going to Do with My Life series. In case you're new to this show, every once in a while, I'll have a guest who talks about possible career choices. I like doing these interviews because you never know what just might resonate with someone. A chance comment can potentially be the answer to a question you might have. It was an unexpected suggestion that led me to my career as a chiropractor. I hadn't even considered that when I was wondering what I was going to do with my life. That turned out to be a good suggestion. So here is another one for you. Are you super organized? Are you dependable? Are you good with details? Do you get the job done? Well, maybe you might consider being an executive assistant. In this interview, I'm speaking with Jess Lindgren, who's the right-hand woman for Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. Pat is a very big name in the online entrepreneurial world, and you may have heard me mention that he has been a huge influence and inspiration in my own journey. Jess is right there to make sure he keeps on track in his mission of helping others. He could not do it alone. An executive assistant is crucial to the success of any CEO. So enjoy this interview with Jess Lindgren. Hey, Jess, welcome to the How to Life podcast, and thank you very much for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, this is a great topic. I think it's an important topic and not one that people think about a lot. So before we begin, can you just please introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Jess Lindgren, and I am an executive assistant of, I think, 18 years now, supporting executives in their various endeavors. I do a little bit of everything. I wear a lot of different hats, and I get things done.
What exactly is an executive assistant?
An executive assistant is the right-hand guy or gal to an executive in a company. So it can be anything from a two-person company where you're supporting the person whose company it is, all the way up to any C-suite individual. So chief marketing officer, chief technology officer, anybody who has that C in their designation. A lot of those people tend to qualify for and need executive support. So just kind of filling in the gaps for everything that, your executive can't get done during the day, but still needs to happen.
Do you go straight to executive assistant or do you start off as assistant? And what is the difference?
Yeah, you definitely start out as an administrative assistant. A lot of people get their start too as a receptionist, that kind of thing. It's an interesting job being an executive assistant because a lot of times you'll see job descriptions that say you must have 2 to 10 years experience as an executive assistant, but you can't get the experience without the job, and vice versa. You can't get the job without the experience. So it's kind of one of those things that you spend your time putting in your time as receptionist or administrative assistant, or you luck out and somebody wants to take a chance on you based on what your prior qualifications are. People who come from office management, project management, that kind of thing tend to make really great executive assistants and vice versa.
What kind of skills do you need as an executive assistant?
Oh, you need really strong project management skills, calendaring skills, a lot of forward thinking. So just kind of you anticipate what might happen and kind of have a game plan in the back of your head. And then a lot of just a really insatiable thirst for learning. People who make great executive assistants are lifelong learners. They're not satisfied with just what they have now. And it's not even necessarily a super, I got to do more, I got to be more, I'm so ambitious and I can't stay in this role. But it's more just when you encounter a problem that you don't know how to answer, you want to figure out how. You want to figure out why. You want to dig more into it and really see what it is. So the next time you encounter it, you say, oh, remember that one time about that? I can just dig that information right back up. We've seen this before. We're more well equipped to handle it this time.
What sort of things do you do as a project manager? What would qualify as a project?
Ooh, anything from events, small scale events, large scale events. Sometimes, if it's a large enough scale event, I might be interfacing with the event manager that we specifically hire for that event. A lot of smaller one off projects. Currently, I support a gentleman who is an author, podcaster, blogger, speaker. I do all of the guest management for two pretty large podcasts and making sure that that happens when it's supposed to happen on time for the production team. It can be travel. One project that I just did is order 5,000 copies of a book. And then I'm working with the publisher. I'm working to make sure that design files are where they need to be. Or in this instance, we did actually have to have some files reissued. So it can be large or small. A lot of detail.
Well, if someone wants to do this, how do they go about marketing themselves or finding a job?
So really what you want to do if you're looking to become an executive assistant is start honing some of those skills, really play up your lifelong learner, start to learn a lot of new skills, but especially things that kind of feed into a support role. So learning calendar management, learning how to provide buffers between appointments, because that's something that's very crucial. You don't just want to book your executive back to back to back. Honing those skills that are essential to executive and administrative work and really play those up on your resume. Take on some projects. You could do some volunteer work. There are all kinds of nonprofit organizations, great and small, that always need administrative help. A lot of times nonprofits are headed by very strong, very passionate idea people who might not necessarily be detail people. And they really need a strong person to help them keep everything in line. So even if you have volunteer experience, if you start a project of your own, that's a really great way of kind of getting your foot in the door. And then don't be afraid to apply for positions. Just put yourself out there and say, hey, here's my resume. If a recruiter likes you, they can always train hard skills. Right. If there's a certain software that you need to know how to use, if there's, you need to be able to run this 500 person event. If you can say, well, I've run a 50 or a 100 person event, maybe I can learn from somebody and scale up to a 500 person event. The recruiter will see, recruiter, HR person, whoever's in charge of the hiring, can see, a bit of your personality on your resume and know if you're a good fit, maybe have a conversation with you. You're just putting yourself out there. And there's some statistic about men will apply for a job, even if they're not like 90+% qualified, almost all of the time. And women, if we see even one thing on the list, we're just like, oh no, I don't have that. Get yourself out there. Change that mindset. Do not be afraid.
That is great advice. I never thought about that, but applying it to myself, yeah. If there's one thing I can't do, I'm like, oh, not qualified.
It's not for you. You're not qualified. That is so not true. Get yourself in there, stand out, have a very clear, very concise resume, play up the skills that you do have that apply for the role that you're applying for, and write a really great cover letter. You don't have to take a negative tack, be like, well, I know I've never been an executive assistant before. Just really play up the positives, play up the things that you have done. I have strong volunteer experience. I have X number of years of administrative experience. I have a strong passion for this, whatever your company is. I've read about the leader of your company and I would love to support them. That's a very simple, very small thing that you can do that will make you stand out head and shoulders above the crowd.
Where is the best place to put yourself out there? On LinkedIn, or is it word of mouth?
It really depends on what you're looking for. LinkedIn is a great place to start that. If you've been on LinkedIn, you've seen a bunch of profiles with a little green circle around it that say looking for work or open for work, something like that. There's other options you can turn on that enable you for the search. You can upload your resume there. It's 2021 while we're recording this. Make yourself a simple little landing page website. Show people a couple more of your skills, a little more of your personality. LinkedIn tends to be more geared toward professionalism. Show a little bit more about yourself and just have a cute little one-page landing page where people can learn a little more about you.
What are some other sites that you can go and look for work?
Jobs.com, yes, monster.com. Indeed, that's the other big one. Fiverr is a great place, Fiverr.
Yes, because you can freelance on that.
Fiverr's
and I want to talk a little bit about freelancing versus being a salaried employee. Tell me the difference between that as far as being an assistant.
That is definitely a burgeoning market. It is something that I really thought you only were an assistant if you had a part or full-time job in an office, if you were a W-2 employee. And when I quit my last job to specifically go freelance, actually, I decided that I would rather have a handful of clients that needed me 5 to 10 hours a week than one client who needed me for 40 hours a week. I wasn't being utilized very well. I was sitting around bored a lot of the time. And I really would rather have been full and engaged and doing really meaningful work rather than feeling like an insurance policy and just kind of sitting around for when you need me. I guess I'm there. So W-2 employee definitely comes with a lot of benefits like health insurance. It comes with somebody else finding and billing clients and you just get paid. Mm-hmm. It comes oftentimes with office space, with office equipment. Your company should issue you a laptop and resources if you need them. Sometimes it comes with like snacks and stuff in the office. So there's definitely perks to being a W-2 employee.
But on the other side,
on the other side of it, as a freelancer, you get paid way more. You have a lot of creative freedom. You have a lot of control over when you are and are not available as a contractor. And I know rules vary state to state and city to city and country to country. So definitely do some digging where you're located. But generally speaking, in my experience in the United States, someone who has employed you on a contract basis cannot mandate your hours. They can't mandate when you do things, other than like you can agree on deadlines for things, but they can't say you need to be available 9 to 5 unless you really actually in writing agree to that. So yeah, a lot of freedom, a lot of creative control. You lose all those things that I mentioned earlier, accounting, HR, all those people who administrate your benefits and your payroll. You lose your cleaning crew. That was something my first couple months in business as a freelancer. I was just like, man, I really kind of miss having somebody come through and take the trash out and tidy things up for me. I miss a regular paycheck. I miss benefits that I didn't have to administer myself. But there's a lot of pride associated with running your own establishment. There's a lot of passion that you're very good at what you do. And I've never liked sales, but I am excellent at selling myself as an executive assistant because I'm good at it.
How long did it take you to feel that way?
About 2 clients worth. The first couple times that I told people, yes, my rate is $35 an hour. I was super shy and nervous and felt like I was going to throw up. And then the contracts got signed and I was like, well, this isn't so bad. Let's try that again. Tried it again. And then I started doing the numbers and said, whoa, $35 is not enough. And immediately started asking for more.
So you are doing a lot of work as an executive assistant. I mean, the CEO is doing a lot of work. The right-hand person, it's the same job, just what the CEO can't do. So you're worth it. Which brings me to my next question. What would you say to encourage people to know their worth and how do they know what to charge, especially in the beginning?
That is a wonderful question. I really love that you asked that. There used to be a really great calculator somewhere online. It's totally gone now. It was called like the freelancing calculator. And in a nutshell, it was my current salary, so the payroll, the benefits, office supplies, that kind of thing. And then add 20% on top of that. So let's just say you were making $30,000 a year. That's roughly $15 an hour. Somebody says, oh my gosh, if I was making $15 an hour on my own and all I need is this extra couple $100 a month to cover my benefits, I'll be rolling in dough. No, you have to set aside like 30% for taxes because you'd rather be
prepared than surprised, right?
Yes, then have to scramble to find, if you only set aside 10 or 15% and then something happened, like happened to me the first year, I made too much money. So I was very happy that I had that extra money set aside. And then my accountant was able to say, okay, you made too much money. Next year, we're going to reclassify you. So currently my company is an LLC, taxed as an S Corp, not super relevant to this conversation necessarily, but basically you need to take what you were making, add all of your expenses to it, and then add at least 20% to that number.
That's a very good rule of thumb. And I have another question about that. How do you report your hours?
For me personally, I use a service called Harvest. They're a very fantastic billing software. You can do time tracking, invoicing, expenses, all of that good stuff right from the app. When I first started, I used to toggle my little timer on. And, if I was checking emails, I would say, okay, you got to turn it on and then you're going to check emails. And when you're done checking emails, you're going to turn it off. After, I would say 6 months, I had a very good handle of just how long it takes to do things, kind of out of that nebulous 9 to 5 full-time job mindset and more into a freelancing mindset where you can estimate much more accurately, but there is going to be a ramp up period.
If you're a W-2 salaried employee, you get a paycheck, which most people are familiar with. But if you're a 1099, how do you get paid?
You do need to, when you start freelancing, if that's what you want to do, you need to be prepared for the fact that you may not see payment from your clients for 1, 2, 3, 6, 12 months. There's different motivation for clients to pay you. People work on different billing cycles. You get people, oh, I forgot the invoice. Oh, I misplaced the invoice. Oh, you turned in your invoice on the 15th and we cut all of our checks on the 14th. And not that there's malicious intent behind every person who takes a long time to pay. A lot of times you are working with bigger companies that have entire accounting departments that's what they do. And if they're a well-oiled machine and you throw your invoice wrench into the works, it's going to gum everything up. So you do need to kind of play by the rules. And if you have lots of clients, that's something that you definitely want to talk about when you sign your contract to work with them. No handshake deals, no over email deals, no verbal agreements. You need it in writing. You need a contract template from your attorney. And then it's a lot of money to spend at the beginning, but it is the best money I have ever spent. And I use it every single time I sign a new client.
Do you ever charge like blocks of time, like have somebody pay up front so they're paying you in advance? Have you ever done that? Can that work?
I have done that. For me personally, that doesn't work. It kind of feels similar to working by the project rather than by the hour. For lots and lots of people out there, working on retainer works great. But yeah, for me personally, I switched to invoicing after.
What has been your experience in invoicing after? Have you had to put people to collections, or does everyone that you bring into your world pretty much pay on time?
I've been very fortunate. There's only one client who has ever flat out refused to pay. Definitely some people that I have had to consistently firmly remind several times to pay. But I have been very fortunate that most of my clients over the years have been paying in a timely manner.
I love the way that this topic we just talked about transition into my next one, and that is about communicating, setting up boundaries ahead of time. How important is that?
That's the entire reason that I left full-time W-2 salaried employment, was because my boundaries were not being respected. That is far and away one of the most important things for me personally. And especially as an executive and personal assistant, those lines can get very blurry very fast and very easily. So for me personally, super important. It's in my contract. Honestly, I'm roughly available like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 p.m. to midnight is one charge, and midnight to the following 8 a.m. is another charge.
Emergencies do arise, but you need to be compensated for that if you have to attend to that. It's very smart to set that up. And there's only so much you can do in order to do your best job. It's important to have that communication with them.
That's really a big mindset shift for executives and executive assistants. Definitely when you are going into a new role, you need to be very firm in the interview process. These are my boundaries.
I'm going to do my best job for you, but I am human.
And if you're not taking care of yourself, especially in a role that does become so personal and so integrated into the CEO's day-to-day life, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of someone else. The analogy with on the airplane, you put your own mask on first. If you don't put your own mask on, you can't take care of someone else. Your brain starts to lose oxygen and you become confused. You become lethargic. You can't speak.
You're useless.
You're totally useless. So get yourself squared away first. Take care of you. If you're not taking care of you, you can't take care of anyone else.
Jess, I've used that exact analogy at least 6 times on other episodes.
It's so true.
It is. And you don't know that you have to do that until you have had that experience. That's kind of the purpose of my podcast, because you don't know these things until you've experienced them, but you've experienced them, Jess, and so have I. So we can share our experience and give you guys little tips about thinking ahead. Okay, so now when you are new to a company, there's a pretty big learning curve. What's the best way to kind of close that learning gap? There's some time that's going to be needed on both ends for you coming in as the assistant to learn the business, to learn the personality, to learn how it flows. What do you do?
The best way to close that gap is to get your executive to agree to as much one-on-one training time with you as you need. If you need a half an hour 3 times a week, take that half an hour. If you need to take meetings with other people in the company, take the initiative to sit down and set up those conversations.
I would say that most appreciate that, the initiative, and that they will agree to that.
Definitely. And especially when you do make the most of those sessions with your executive. Your CEO, especially, is the most forward facing member of the company. They're out there doing the deals, getting the work done. You're there to support them. Your executive can't do the work that they do without you. And it's very apparent when they don't have that support and they're floundering. So if you make great use of that time, and especially if you are able to take the initiative to find answers elsewhere, I could come to those meetings and say, okay, this is what I think the answer is. Can you confirm, or can you fill in the gaps in knowledge?
I listened to an interview that you had given, and you had talked about, I think it's the previous job you had, the one where there was no communication. And after that experience, you set the intention of what kind of job you wanted, what kind of employer you wanted, what kind of environment you wanted to be in. And you ended up getting exactly what you wrote down on your list. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about how important placing your order is, setting your intention, and then kind of take us through the journey from the beginning, what you learned, where it led you, and where you are now.
I love that. Absolutely. The intention was I didn't want to work with people who suck. That's literally what I said to myself. Okay, nobody else who sucks. You don't have to be best friends with each other, but you do have to have some common ground, morals that are in line with each other.
And where did that lead you?
It led me to having a conversation with a woman named Mindy. She works at this company called Smart Passive Income, and we worked out of the same co-working space. Just met up for coffee one day. She told me that she loved my business name. When I quit my job, and I just went through my email and just sent a note and said, hey, everybody, Jess here, life update. I'm quitting my job, throwing a party. You should come. And just said, I'm going to be a freelance executive assistant. Here are some examples of what I can do. Is your receptionist going to be out for a week? I would love to come cover your desk. Do you need a holiday party for your company for 50 people? I have an entire Rolodex full of contacts at all the best restaurants in town. Whatever it is that you need, if it's not on this list, reach out to me, because I promise if I can't do it, I know somebody who can. Within about 5 minutes of sending that email out, this lovely woman named Mindy reached back out to me and said, we have a job for you. And it turned out that their client, his name is Pat Flynn. He's the host of the Smart Passive Income podcast, the Ask Pat podcast, like I touched on earlier, blogger, podcaster, author, speaker, husband and father, all of the things that he does. And we just started off with a one-off project. I was going to tame his email inbox. There's a great episode that I still have yet to listen to 8 years later. It's 9,000 unread emails to inbox 0. And I think it's SPI 115, if you want to look that up, 115. And people tell me all the time that they share it with their assistant and they get a lot of value out of it. Like I said, I can't even bring myself to listen to it. But we just started off with a one-off project of taming his inbox. And then he said, okay, well, now that this is tamed, can I keep you here to keep it in check? And it just grew from there. And it grew from 5 hours a week to 10 to 15 to 35 to 60. And when I hit the 60 mark, we hired somebody to take on the overflow.
An assistant for you.
Yes, my very own assistant. It's true.
And you're still working there today.
I am. I'm still working with Pat. So if any of you are Smart Passive Income fans or Ask Pat fans, I've been on Ask Pat once. I've been on SPI. Depending on when this publishes, I will be on 3 appearances on the Smart Passive Income podcast. There's another one coming out in just a couple weeks.
That's a highly coveted spot too.
It is. So very humbled, very proud. I love the work that I do with Pat, and he is so appreciative and he doesn't get in my way. He doesn't want to know how I did something. He just wants to know that it was done and taken care of.
And when you get that rapport, your executive knows that you've got their back, and you also know that they respect you. That's a working relationship made in heaven.
It's the dream.
I take it you love it.
I do.
Jess, before we go, can you give me 3 benefits of being an executive assistant as a career, not just a stepping stone?
Absolutely. So 3 benefits are you have a lot of flexibility in your work. I do my best work starting at 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't have to start at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock. I don't have to be anywhere physically in an office. Pat and I are both night owls. It works for us. There's definitely a lot of prestige in the job because you are the right-hand person to the CEO, to the personality. And no 2 days are ever the same. The variety for me is just, there's nothing better. And again, you learn so much along the way when your days are different.
Jess, how can people find you and how can they find some of the shows that you've been on?
Yeah, if you come over to my website, I've got a couple. So you can go to jesslindgren.com/famous. I've been featured on a lot of different shows. I'm also a very proud and very avid blood donor. And that's very important to me and such an easy thing that you can do to serve your community. And then you can go to askanassistant.com. Also, I'm the host of the podcast, Ask an Assistant. I'm here to answer your questions. If you need to know more about hiring an assistant, if you are an assistant, if you work in the C-suite of your organization, I come with 18 years of experience helping run the back end of different companies. And I just have so much knowledge to share. And I really want to help you become more efficient and more effective, one episode at a time.
Jess Lindgren, this was such a great interview. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of this with everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, as a closing, anybody who is considering a career as an administrative professional, it is a career. You can use it as a stepping stone, which is totally fine too. There's merit in both, but don't ever let somebody call you just an assistant. Your CEO, the person that you support, cannot do the work that they do without you. You are so integral to the success of whatever organization that you work in.
Very good. Thought-provoking. This was a great interview, not only for the highly skilled person who would be a good fit for this type of job, but also for any executive who may need support. Jess is a great resource for both roles. You got a question? Just ask her. You can listen to her interviews on Smart Passive Income and the Ask Pat podcast. Check out her own podcast, Ask an Assistant, or just ask her a question directly. All her contact information will be in the show notes for this episode, howtolife.com/053. We talked about how volunteering is a great way to acquire skills and maybe make some connections. It's a great place to start. And if you want to know how to do that, have a listen to my episode 51 interview with the CEO of Volunteer Crowd, which is an amazing organization that matches the organization with volunteers and vice versa. And to learn a bit more about freelancing, episode 26 will really give you some insight about how and why you might want to market your skills. It is my hope that you enjoyed this episode and it was helpful. Check out the other What Am I Going to Do with My Life interviews. All of those can be found on my website, howtolife.com, and I'll link those in my show notes as well. Many thanks for your support for my show, and I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Let me know. I would be happy to do a show or mominar on something specific just for you. That is a wrap for today. I am wishing you a purposeful and satisfying rest of the week. Enjoy it. Have fun and be kind to everyone, but especially be kind to yourself. You are awesome. You got this.